Can one parish priest really change the church? The story of St. John Leonardi reminds us that the answer is a resounding yes. Born in 1541 in the small village of Diecimo, nestled amid the rolling hills of Tuscany, John Leonardi's beginnings were modest. The child of humble parents, he grew up in a world where faith was woven into daily life. Yet the church faced challenges, divisions, misunderstandings, and the daunting task of nurturing souls in a rapidly changing age. John's early years were not spent in the quiet of a monastery or the grandeur of a cathedral, but in the bustling space of a pharmacy. As a young man, John studied to become a pharmacist, learning the art of healing bodies with herbs and remedies. Day after day, he witnessed suffering and the human longing for hope. But as he mixed medicines and tended to the sick, he began to sense a deeper calling. It was not enough to heal bodies alone. He yearned to heal hearts, to bring the medicine of Christ's love into a world aching for meaning. This gentle stirring grew into a burning desire. At the age of 26, John Leonardi made a radical decision. He left behind his apprenticeship and entered the seminary. Ordained a priest, John's ministry began in Lucca, a city alive with trade and culture, but also with spiritual confusion. The Protestant Reformation had shaken Europe, and the Catholic Church was striving to renew itself. John saw not just the problems, but the potential. He spent hours in prayer, asking God to reveal how he could serve. The answer came slowly, as it often does, with small opportunities, daily encounters, and the quiet encouragement of grace. John's first great work was catechesis, teaching the faith to children and adults alike. He saw that many people, even those who attended Mass, did not truly understand the riches of Catholic belief. With simple words and a gentle spirit, he gathered groups in homes and churches, explaining the creed, the sacraments, the mysteries of God's love. He wrote clear, accessible guides to help others teach as well. In an era when confusion and error abounded, John's catechetical work was like a lighthouse, shining steadily through the fog. But John Leonardi's vision was never content to remain small. He dreamed of something more, a congregation of priests dedicated to renewal, education, and mission. In 1574, he founded the Clerks Regular of the Mother of God. The priests who joined him were not chosen for their prestige or influence, but for their zeal and humility. They lived simply, prayed deeply, and gave themselves to the work of evangelization. John urged his brothers to see themselves as leaven, hidden, humble, but destined to transform the world from within. The congregation faced opposition. Powerful secular authorities in Lucca resented John's independence and his insistence on spiritual reform. For a time he was exiled from his own city, forced to watch from afar as his fledgling community struggled. Yet John did not grow bitter or discouraged. He placed his trust in God, believing that small beginnings, when offered with faith, could be multiplied beyond all imagining. Through years of adversity, John's reputation grew. The Pope called him to Rome, seeking his advice on how to renew the Church's missionary spirit. John responded with characteristic boldness, helping to establish the Propaganda Fide, the Vatican's office for missionary work. Under his guidance, priests were sent to distant lands, carrying the gospel to continents that had never heard of Christ. John's vision stretched across oceans and centuries, as his advice and example inspired generations of missionaries. What was the secret of John Leonardi's impact? It was not wealth, political power, or even extraordinary talent. It was a faithful vision, a willingness to say yes to God's invitation, even when the path was unclear. John never set out to be famous, nor did he dream of grandeur. He simply responded, day by day, to the needs before him. He taught, he prayed, he gathered others, and he persevered through every trial. Each small act, Each humble decision became a thread in the tapestry of renewal that spread across the church. John's life reminds us that God delights in multiplying small beginnings. When he started teaching catechism, he did not know that his words would echo through centuries. When he founded his congregation, he could not have predicted that its members would travel the globe, bringing the light of faith to distant lands. His yes was not dramatic. It was daily, persistent, and trusting. And God took that yes and made it fruitful beyond imagination. Today, the world faces its own divisions, confusions, and spiritual challenges. The temptation is to believe that only the powerful or famous can make a difference. But John Leonardi's story whispers another truth. One person's faithful response can set in motion a ripple that changes the course of history. It is not the size of our beginnings that matters, but the depth of our trust. Consider the pharmacist turned priest who saw suffering and offered healing, who saw ignorance and offered understanding, who saw division and offered unity. He did not wait for perfect circumstances or universal approval. He acted with the courage of conviction, the humility of service, and the persistence of hope. His congregation endures, his catechetical renewal continues, and the missionaries inspired by his vision still carry the gospel to new frontiers. What might your own yes accomplish? It may seem small. A conversation with a friend, a gesture of kindness, a commitment to prayer, a willingness to serve in your parish or community. But as St. John Leonardi knew, small seeds, when sown in faith, can become mighty trees. Our willingness to offer what we have, trusting that God will multiply it, is the beginning of every great renewal. The story of John Leonardi is not just about the past. It is an invitation to each of us, here and now. Dare to believe that your small yes today could shape the future of faith. You may never see all the fruits of your labors, nor will you always know the impact of your choices. But you can trust, as John did, that God is at work in every act of love, every word of truth, every step of faith. Let the example of this parish priest encourage you. Dream big, even in the midst of smallness. Say yes to the opportunities before you, no matter how humble they appear. And remember, the church is renewed not by the famous, but by the faithful. Like John Leonardi, your life can be a seed, hidden, humble, and destined to bear fruit for generations yet to come.